Here's a half-baked idea that may have some actual truth to it. The United States military maintains a large number of contingency plans. They have like a whole unit of game theorists and propaganda experts working together to devise strategies to react to any conceivable scenario. For example, they had a contingency plan to launch an invasion of Montreal should Quebec vote to separate. Clinton actually had the jets on standby. There were contingency plans in the Second World War, to invade Canada. And Canada has contingency plans actually to invade the United States. If you it's a library of contingency plans, right? Anything that you can imagine possible that would necessitate a military reaction has been thought out and planned through and worked out, right? So, what if there's a contingency plan to stop Hillary Clinton? And even Bill is acting on it. Bill's on the payroll, right? No, really, what if the deep state sees Hillary Clinton as such a threat that it has gone into a military contingency plan to stop her? Well, if you ask me, this email thing seems very orchestrated and centralized and scripted, almost like it's a show trial. You can see the way it's developed, like waiting for certain things to unfold before it goes through. It seems orchestrated, but what? What is orchestrating it? She seems to have the Democratic Party under control, or she seems to. But she doesn't have the deep state under control, right? Hillary's tenure at the State Department was apparently rough on an interpersonal level many times over. Much yelling and screaming, apparently. Worse, she seems to be for sale to foreign interests through her foundation connections. The most recent thing was insider trading with her son-in-law regarding the bailout in Greece. If the system has self-disciplining algorithms, error correction, then it would just be doing its job in picking this up. Because those state secrets are going to go out to benefit, her own business interests. If it did, then it should, right? If the State Department was, properly self-immunized against outside threats that wish to break the foundation of what it does, then it would orchestrate something like this in order to keep her out. I'm gonna change my battery. So I have no evidence. Don't mistake me. Don't mistake this for a journalistic expose. I told you it's a half-baked idea, but it's absolutely true. So I don't know the plotline of this tale here, but it seems like it's going to be narrated for us. I just find the idea of the deep state reacting to a presidential candidate on national security grounds to be intriguing, or great theater at least, right? It's maybe a bit of a plot twist, isn't it? Because a big part of the narrative of this election has been how Clinton is just ridiculously corrupt, right? And the system is broken if it lets her walk in. But the plot twist may be that the system might actually keep her out because she's so ridiculously corrupt. And I think there's recent precedent for this too, although now I'm stacking baked idea on top of baked idea. So, extreme caveat lector here. But I think this is basically what happened in Russia around the Ukrainian issue. Western-backed factions in Ukraine were calculated as such an existential threat that they launched the deep state into a security operation, and the military took over. It was like an absolute crisis scenario for the Russian intelligence services, like a doomsday scenario for them. That's a threat that Russia has not faced since the Second World War. And they learned in the Second World War what happens. When they have unfriendly forces in control in the Ukraine. So that's like an absolute, a red line, an absolute breaking point, a crisis scenario, a total existential threat. And so like the deepest part of the military flipped a switch, and they've been on autopilot ever since. Like if you look at what they did in Syria, that's like completely unprecedented in like modern period. Like when was the last time the Russians did something like that, like Afghanistan? I mean, if you don't include like Chechnya and stuff. I think there may have been some bombing, like in the Central Asian region, but that was in coordination with U.S. anti-terrorism actions. An independent Russian operation in a different country. That hasn't happened since the 80s. Like something seriously clicked there, right? Now, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself in assigning prescriptions to a scenario I invented out of whole cloth, but perhaps it demonstrates the dangers of allowing intelligence agencies control over any kind of state machinery. You give them an inch, and they take control of the whole thing. And then democracy becomes an impossible illusion, as flawed as the core choices may be. Even the facade is a distraction for the naive. As flawed as the democratic process was in picking Clinton as a nominee, and as flawed as it may be in electing her, she's winning. She won the primary, she's winning the election. And, it's a bad choice, no question. You done fucked up down there. Not a good choice for president. But that's the choice that people made, right? But it seems to me like this deep state, military, intelligence, CIA, people that saw what she did in the State Department, and maybe weren't so happy about it, are going into an operation to stop her. And what that means exactly might not be clear, right? It's like the calculation it seems like they're taking is like consequences be damned, not her, right? And anybody but Clinton, right? But are they doing this now because they do want this dealt with before the convention? Like, is this ramping up so that the Democrats can pick a leader at the convention? Or is it going to drag on afterwards, right? Because if they're accelerating it to get it done before the convention, that indicates that they see the need for the Democrats to pick an option against Trump, right? And that might be, the reasoning for that. But it's nonetheless it's a full stop, right? And we've seen the Americans do this in other countries, right? Or the most obvious example is with Hamas and Gaza. But I mean, I think that a lot of did Quebec win the referendum? Did Scotland win the referendum? Did Brexit actually pass? Right? When they have these close votes like this, it's always, you know, it's always some suspicion, and there invariably does arise some uh, abnormalities, but they're not enough to change the election. They say, well, and then they do recounts, and it gets closer, and it's never clear, right? But well, actually, you know what? Maybe at a presidential level, it did happen before too, right? I guess with Gore and Bush, Gore wins the election, and the military's just like, no. Like, the talk of this is something I like to bring up now and again because a lot of younger people don't seem to know this. And I think even a lot of older people, because this was kind of still before the internet, right? Even in the years like 1999, 2000, I still got pretty much all my news from the internet. There's always somebody watching TV upstairs. They didn't want to watch the news. And I didn't really want to watch what they were watching. So I would, I would, like, if I wanted to figure out something that was happening or something, I would go on the internet and figure it out, right? And that was like 99, 2000. That's still like, older people were alive then, but most of them didn't get their news from the internet, right? Until, I don't know, I guess the switchover would have been sometime in the mid-2000s, late 2000s even. That's an empirical question. You can look up the stats. But people that were actually getting their news from the internet during that period may remember that there was actually widespread speculation in the alternative media on the internet about Bush not accepting the results of the election. The discussion on the internet accurately predicted. Not exactly, right? Like, I don't remember any specific discussions about, a Supreme Court ruling and a planted Attorney General or any of that kind of stuff, right? But there was talk about military movements. The sort of well, like I say, it was independent media that was getting their information from military sources, and there was rumbling about it. It was broadcast beforehand that the results of the election weren't in question, that Bush was going to win the election. And, if it's close, or, if Gore somehow manages to win, then there's going to be a coup. And like, the talk is still out there, like that kind of media, right? I'm talking about like media, like the equivalent to it nowadays would be something like Truth Out or Counterpunch. It kind of stuff that's on the fringe of the spectrum, right? And I don't even remember where to look. I remember reading it. So, and I'm too young to remember this myself, but I've read more than one analysis of the 1980 election that suggested that the CIA was very much instrumental in electing Ronald Reagan, right? So, and if you go back further than that, well, apparently JFK stuffed the ballots in Chicago to win. I don't know if that's probably before the modern CIA, anyways. Yeah, that's probably why, if you go back a little further, there's less examples, because the modern CIA didn't exist then. But I mean, if you can pull out examples, I mean, there's been rumors that Obama had CIA connections, and that's kind of a big factor in his rise up, right? Which may be not unrelated to this, right? I hypothesized before, like if you go back to my writings in like 2014, 2015, I was expecting that they would run somebody against her, right? Just like they did in 2008. And when at the end of it, the person that was running against her was Bernie Sanders, I had to abandon that, right? If there was another candidate, maybe Martin O'Malley, I don't know if they had, if they were banking on somebody or not, but could it have been Bernie Sanders? We'll never know, right? But this is what they're defaulting to, What I'm getting at is that maybe instead of running somebody against her, they had decided that they should try her in public. And when I use the term show trial, that's more than uh, outlandish rhetoric. I mean that literally. This election could very well turn into, if it carries on, they may be trying to give the Democrats a way out, but if it carries on, if she is nominated, this election may very well turn into a trial on Hillary Clinton's crimes. And she may be publicly tried in the public arena by the deep state. That's a show trial. I doubt the consequences will be severe. Go home. But I think that's what we're dealing with here. I know it's a half-baked idea, but we'll see as time develops how close that comes to reality. I think that actually you can make an argument for CIA involvement in pretty much every election since 1980 anyways. Yeah. I'm just contemplating whether see, what I was trying to explain was that this scenario doesn't appear to take into account the unintended consequence of electing somebody like Donald Trump, right? It's almost like the system has to absorb a blow to prevent a greater one. Going after her early would be a way out of that, right? I mean, the contingency plan is probably designed to assume the Republican candidate wins, but that can't be acceptable either at this point, right? Well, I've been ranting for far too long. I hope you've enjoyed this delve into the land of the imaginary. Right?